Well, hello everyone. This is the first video of a series of video that I will be recording for this Python course. So let's start. Well, a little bit about me. I'm Chilean. I was born in Chile. I lived my entire life there until 2021. Just like it says here, when I moved to Chicago to study. I'm a computer science student, and I'm currently enrolled in Northwestern University. I'm in the class of 2025, and I've been peer mentor for different computer science courses. It's one of the reasons I've realized that I really like to teach programming, and I think we're gonna have a really fun time here learning Python. I'm an incoming intern at Microsoft in Seattle. I'm a freelancer software developer, and also I'm super passionate about science and technology. Okay, a little bit about the course. It will be divided in three stages. The first one is going to be the basic one, where we are going to go through the Python workflow, variables, different types, operators, function, some algorithms, simple algorithms, and we are going to work with classes, error handling, external libraries, and recursion, which is like the last thing we are going to view in the basic stage. Then we are going to go to an intermediate stage where we are going to work with APIs. We're going to be doing a little bit of web scrapping, and we are going to do prod with files. You're gonna learn what that means. And also we're gonna be working with version control with Git and GitHub, and also with NumPy and Pandas for data analysis. And the last stage is going to be an advanced stage where we are going to be working with backend development, like server-side development, and using the Flask framework, which is a framework we are going to use to develop web applications using Python. Also, we're going to be working with Postgres SQL databases, and we are going to be deploying this code to the cloud. Also, I really want to go through a little bit of machine learning and artificial intelligence algorithms and applications, but probably this is going to be not a different course, but it's going to be a course itself. So I think that there's a lot of things we can work with there. So let's start. I mean, if you ask me why should I take this course, I think that no matter what are you doing or in which industry are you working at, it's really important, especially now, especially in the time we are living, to have at least a glimpse of what is coding and how coding works. I think it's a skill that can give you a different perspective about how things work and about how to solve different problems. And if you like it and if you take it to the next level, you can develop incredible applications. You can solve very complex problems with sophisticated approach, and you can improve your career. I mean, you can do data analysis for the company you're working at. You can develop personal projects and boost your academic and professional career. So we're going to be working especially with automation. Probably this is going to come in the second stage, in the intermediate stage, but later on we're going to be working with different kinds of automation, like how to generate Excel files automatically, how to connect with different data sources and analyze that data automatically from that sources and other kind of cool stuff and much more. So before starting, if there's something you should do before start with the course, the first thing is install Python in your computer. No matter if you're working in Mac OS or if you're working in Windows, it's important that you could install the Python installer and then install the Python script in your computer. And probably, especially if you are working on Windows, you're gonna have to add Python to your path. I'm gonna let two links below, one for installing Python in your computer for both Windows and Mac, and also to install Visual Studio Code. So let's start coding. Okay, so first we are going to get familiarized with the Visual Studio Code environment and also with the basics of Python. The first thing you will have to do is to create a Python file. To doing that in Visual Studio Code, as like I recommend before, you have to create a folder. So you can just create a folder. You open the folder inside of Visual Studio Code. The first thing you're gonna see when open Visual Studio Code is an option to open a folder. You open the folder. In this case, the folder is called Python course. So you just open it. And inside of it, I have this 3 different folders, which is for the advanced stage, basic, and intermediate one. And if you look at here, where it says basic, I can just click this button, which is a new file. And I'm going to create a new file inside of the basic folder. And everything I have to do is to write file and then add the .py extension. And that's all. I'm going to be creating a Python script. And Visual Studio Code is going to identify that I'm working with a Python script. So you're going to see this symbol here that is going to tell you that Visual Studio Code identified the file as a Python file. So I already created the file for you. So we are going to be working on this one, which is class number 1. And we are going to get familiarized with the concept of variables. So when you think about variables, you have to, and I always recommend to think about variables as boxes where you want to put information. So when you're creating different kind of programs, or you're solving problems, what you want to have is to have spaces in, let's say here in your memory, to store information, either like simple information like numbers or words, as also complicated information, like for example, the entire content of the course, let's say. So variables are going to be like our kind of boxes. And the way I'm going to put things in that boxes is by declaring the following. I'm going to say, let's say I will have a variable called variable1, which is going to be equal to 1. So what I'm saying is that I'm taking this value, which is 1, and I'm assigning this that value to this variable here, which is called variable 1. So then I can have another variable, let's say variable 2, where we can have a different value. For example, this is a word. So I can store that value inside of that, let's say, box, so I can use it in a different time. So because all the boxes can contain different things, it's important to understand what kind of things are we going to be storing in these boxes. So the first thing we're going to learn is the basic types of variables that we can work with in Python. So there are 4 main types of variables that we can work with. The first one are integers. So as you know, integers are just like natural numbers, natural and like whole numbers that we can work with. So for example, if I say -1, if I say 0, if I say 1, or whatever, all these numbers are going to be integers. So they're not partitioned, and they don't have floating numbers, they don't have commas or dots or whatever. They're only numbers, and they're pretty useful because if we are counting things, or if we want to work with sort of like counting algorithms or whatever, we don't need more than integers, because we are not going to be counting half parts or third parts of something. But what happens if we want to do so? Then we are going to have this different data type, which is going to be floats. So floats variable, as you can see here, can look pretty similar to the integer variables, but the difference is they are gonna have the dot. So this will tell Python that you are not working with an integer, even when here, if you compare these two variables, are gonna be numerically the same, but in terms of what Python knows about these variables is different, because they are gonna be the behavior of this variable inside of the system is gonna be different because they have different types. And we are gonna like go in depth with that in a future videos. So what happens if I want to store words or phrases or an entire book? Then when I'm working with characters, what I use to store them is a string type variable. So basically a string is, for example, like it says here, this is a word. So if I'm working with a string, I'm always going to denote the string with the quotes. So if I have quotes, I will know that I'm working with strings, okay? So the last type that I'm gonna be working with, and probably the most intuitive one, is the Boolean type. So basically a Boolean is a variable that only can take two values. One value is true and the other one is false. So this is pretty useful because there's a lot of different situations where the only thing I need to know is if something is happening or if it is not. So that's all the information I need. So that's the time when I use like a Boolean variable, because it's gonna tell me information about what is happening in terms of yes or no, 1 or 0. They're binary and there are only two of them. In the future, we're going to learn that we can also represent these Boolean variables as numbers. Like, for example, like we say, like 0 is going to be false and 1 is going to be true. So I can convert 1 as being true and 0 as being false. So when I have that, I will be able to differentiate and I will be able to understand a program when I look at it by understanding what kind of variables I'm working with. So let's say if I'm working with integers, for example, if I say, okay, I have this variable, which is variable 1, and I have this variable, which is variable 2, I know that I cannot add these two variables because they belong to different types and types that are not compatible. They cannot be combined in any way. What can I do? I can probably convert the type of one of the variables in a way that I can use it. For example, if I put a 1 here, I can see that it can be perfectly a string. So probably, and we are going to see that in future videos, we can convert this type and then we can combine those variables. So because we're talking about combining, something important that you also will learn to work with are operators. So operators are the way we interact and we make the variables interact with each other. So let's say the basic operator is going to be the plus sign. So let's say I have x, I can declare a variable x, which is going to be equal to 1, which is an integer. And then I will have another variable y, which is going to be equal to 2. Okay. I'm also going to teach you the first function you will learn, which is the print function. We are not going to go in depth about how this works, but it's going to be really useful, especially at the beginning when you need to visualize what is happening in the program, because it will allow you to visually identify what is happening. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to say that we are going to create a result variable, and we are going to use our previous variables to compute our result that is going to be stored in the result variable. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to say this is going to be equal to x plus y. So Python is a really intelligent language. It's able to compute and to do complex operations and assign the result of that operations to the variables immediately. It's sometimes it's even able to convert from one type to another to handle different errors. So in this case, what we're doing is we're saying to Python, okay, x is equal to 1, and then y is equal to 2. So now result is going to be equal to the value that is stored in x plus the value that is stored in y. So basically what we can do, we can print that in the command line, in the terminal, and we can say, okay, I want to know which is the result of this operation. So what is the value that now is stored inside of the result? So if we run this program, and you can run the program by clicking this arrow in the right top corner, you can see that here you have. So when you run this program, you will find that this is equal to 3. And that's right, because 1 plus 2 is going to be equal to 3. Now, and this is when types came into the game. So let's say this is going to be equal to 2.0. What should happen with this result? We are going to calculate it. And now we're still having 3, but now we have 3 in a different type. So like you see, because one of the operators is a floating number, we cannot assume that the result is an integer because we can lose information if we expect the number to be a floating number. So automatically Python says, okay, because you're adding an integer with a float, I'm going to give you a float as the result of the operation. And there's other function that you can use to check this, which is called type. So if I put type here, what I'm basically saying is, okay, first tell me which is the type of the result. And once you have the type of the result, print it into the terminal. So let's say first I'm working with 1 and 2 as the beginning. So I run the program and I have this, which says class int. So int represents the integer type. So then what happened when I change this to a floating number? So if I run the program again, I'm going to have that now the result variable is going to store a float type information. So this is the basic operator. We can compute the subtraction of it. We can compute the multiplication, but every time we are working with a float and an integer, the program is going to assume that we are working with floating number. And for example, here, if we multiply, this is going to be the operator for the multiplication. I can also compute the multiplication. This is 1 times 2, which is going to give you 2.0, which is a floating number of 2. But what happens if I have strings? For example, if I have x here and I have y here, and I want to add them up. So because Python is really intelligent in the sense of it kinds of understand what we are trying to do or tries to assume what we are trying to do, we can also add these strings to be together. So what happens if we run this code? We're going to see here. So basically, you have that the result is xy. So it's basically combining those strings as a single string. But can we multiply the strings? It does have any sense to do that? No, because the multiplication only receives numbers, but there's only one exception when you can work with something different than a number, and it's basically when you say, okay, I want to multiply y by 2. So in this case, if you run it, what it happens is that the string is put it 2 times, and it creates a new string where the initial string is repeated. The initial string is repeated 2 times. If I change this by 100, it just prints the initial string 100 times. So this is kind of things that you will be learning, and you will be working with. You're gonna get used to it, but it's are important to know. So once you understand that you can play with this, you can play with these variables. One really important thing that you have to learn is how the flow of the program works. So, and with flow, it's important to know that when you're working in Python, the Python script is always going to be run from the beginning to the end, line by line. So when I run this, what the program does is, okay, it identifies this as comments. If you see everything that you start with this chart here is going to assume there's a comment. So it's not going to run anything that is after this chart here. And here that we don't have a chart, it's going to say, okay, you're trying to assign this value to this variable. So I'm going to put this value inside of this variable. Then the same for variable 2, then skip this block here, and then it reached the x variable, then the y variable, and so on and so forth. So what happened if I say, okay, I want x equal to 3. So which value is going to take? So if I print the result, and I say, okay, I want result to be equal to x plus y, you're going to realize that the result is 5. So it's not taking this x equal to 1 anymore. And this is because the script is executed from the beginning to the end. So everything that happens first, then can be overridden. And this happens because, okay, here I gave to Python the instruction to say, okay, I want to put 1 inside of this variable x, but now I want to put 3 inside this variable x. And this is the last instruction I gave to Python, and it's the last instruction that Python is going to execute. So the value of x is going to be actually 3, and it's not going to be 1 anymore. And this is something pretty important because we are going to use that behavior, that feature of the Python logic, the Python workflow, to solve some problems. Because many times we need to update information that we had because now we have new information. So if you believe that probably the people that were going to vote for some candidate were, I don't know, 3 million people, and then you apply some kind of, I don't know, statistics, you realize that it's actually going to be 4 million people, then you need to update the variable that you have. So there's multiple cases when you will need to rewrite the information inside of your variable, and we are going to be working with it. So another operators that we have are the comparison operators, which is something we're going to see in depth later. But if something that you need to know, for example, if we still working with this as numbers, is, for example, you can also divide. You can apply the division. So let's say result is going to be equal to the division of y divided by 1, or 1 divided by x. That is going to be the division. You have another kind of operation, which is the whole division, where basically here what you have is, I want to know, or integer division. Here, what I want to know is, I want to know how many times does x, can I put x inside of y as whole numbers. So for example, if this is 2 and this is 5, and I print the result, I'm going to find out that the result is 2 because I can only put x inside of 5. Like if I multiply 2 times 2, I'm going to reach 4. But if I multiply 3 times 2, I'm going to be at 6. So it's going to be more than what I'm looking for. So this computes the quotient like of the division as an integer. So it's the integer division procedure. And the opposite thing is to say, okay, what if I want to get the remainder of the operation, like the opposite thing? So then I can use the module operator. So the module operator is going to tell me, okay, what is the remainder of that quotient operation? So then if I run the code, you will find, okay, the remainder is 1. And that's true because if I divide 5 over 2, I will find out that the integer division is 2. So I'm missing one more unit to reach 5, which is correct. And then the last operator that we need to know is the power of. So what if I want to put y to the power of x? Then I should get 25, which is exactly what I get here. So this is the basic operators that we are going to be working with. The combination of those can be very powerful to develop algorithms, and we're going to see it in the next videos. And like I said before, we're still missing one kind of operators, which are the comparison operators. So basically here, what we want to do is not do an arithmetic operation like we did before with the power, with the remainder, with the integer division or the division itself. What we want to do is just to analyze if something is bigger than, equal than, different than. So if I change this, I will say, okay, I want to know if x is less than, if y is less than x. So what happened when I print the result? What happened is that it returns a Boolean. So this is an important thing about these operators, which are the comparison operators, is that always are going to return a Boolean value. So they're going to tell me if the condition is met or if the condition is not met. It's everything I need to know. So if I put the opposite and I change the sign, I will find that the condition in this time is true. And I can confirm that the type is Boolean because if I use the type function, what I will get is that this type is a Boolean. So what if I want to know if they're different? I can say, okay, is y different than x? And this is the operator that I'm going to use in case if I want to know if they're different. So probably is going to be true. So if I print the result, I will find out that this is going to be true. And that's right, because 5 is not equal to 2. But what happens if I say, okay, I want to know if they're equal to each other? Then I will find out that they're not equal to each other. And the same thing I can do if I want to check is less or greater than, or less or equal than x, or greater or equal than x. I have all these comparison methods that I can use to check if that is true or not. So this is kind of the basics that you need to know about Python. We are going to combine these concepts a lot, but this is something that you really have to know before starting doing more complicated things. The most important thing that you have to know is understand what is a variable. And like we said, you have to see variables are like spots, like places where you can save information, but you don't save that information forever. You can change it, you can modify it, or you can just simply delete that information. Then that information is not always going to be stored in the same type, the same way. Sometimes it's going to be binary information. Sometimes we're going to be talking about words. Sometimes we're going to be working about numbers in different types of numbers and whatever. And finally, we must it's pretty common that we are not going to only store that information, but we are going to do stuff with that information. So operators are one of the things that we are going to, or one of the methods we are going to apply to these variables, because we want to extract information from that variables. We want to know what is the sum of the variables probably, or if they're different or not, or we want to, in the future, we want to know if, for example, some word is contained or not in a big phrase or whatever. So we're gonna be make these variables to interact one with each other, and we are going to be using the operators for that, and to check if that is happening or not. So, well, this is the end of this first video. I hope you enjoy it. I will always be open to criticism or any advice that you can give me to do this series better for you, more easy to follow, easy to understand, or anything you think could improve the quality of the course. So see you later.